Your free guide to this story has already been sent to you, so check your inbox. If you're new here, just click the link in the description below for your totally free copy. Now just sit back and enjoy the story. Let's do this. Date night. Sarah looked at herself in the bedroom mirror one last time. She smoothed down her little black dress and smiled. Tonight felt special, like those early days when getting ready for a night out gave her butterflies. At 35, Sarah had settled into married life. Wednesday nights meant shopping at Tesco. Saturdays meant cleaning the house. Sundays meant roast dinner and a nap on the sofa. Romance had turned into routine, passion into companionship. But lately, she'd been feeling restless, as if life was passing her by whilst she folded laundry and paid bills. "You scrub up quite well, Mrs. Fletcher," she whispered to her reflection, putting on the deep red lipstick she'd bought during her lunch break. The colour made her feel daring and sexy, nothing like the sensible wife who usually looked back at her from this mirror. The decision to have monthly date night, a time for just the two of them, away from the humdrum lifestyle they'd fallen into, had been an easy one. Last month, they'd gone to the theatre at her suggestion, but tonight was fine dining. The Ivy Garden restaurant had been David's idea, and Sarah had to admit it was perfect. Hidden away in the old part of town, it was the sort of place that whispered of secret meetings, not somewhere you'd bump into neighbours or work colleagues. The ideal spot for a special evening. Because David had to work late, she'd arranged to meet him at the restaurant. The taxi ride was filled with nervous energy. "Special occasion?" the driver asked, glancing at her fancy outfit in the mirror. "Just our weekly date night," she replied with a smile. Out of habit, Sarah found herself checking her wedding ring, twisting the gold band around her finger. 15 years, she thought. How time had flown. As the cab stopped outside the restaurant, she saw David waiting outside. He was pacing the pavement like a nervous father-to-be. He looked different tonight. His usual casual clothes replaced by a sharp suit that showed off his tall frame. His dark hair was styled with more care than usual, and when he smiled as she approached, Sarah felt that familiar flutter in her stomach. "You look absolutely beautiful," he said softly. "I mean, you always look lovely, but tonight, Sarah, you're glowing." She felt her cheeks grow warm with pleasure. At home, compliments were rare. They'd been replaced by talks about mortgage payments and whose turn it was to take out the bins. But this was their weekly date night, when such topics were banned. "You don't look too bad yourself," she replied, allowing herself to really look at him. David had always been attractive in a quiet way, not obviously handsome, but there was something appealing about his easy confidence and the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed. Inside the restaurant was everything Sarah had hoped for. Soft lighting created romantic shadows across white tablecloths. Quiet music played in the background. The table was tucked away in a private corner. Perfect. "This is amazing," Sarah said, as David helped her into her chair. The old-fashioned gesture was charming, so different from her usual evenings slouched on the sofa in front of the telly. "Nothing's too good for you," David replied, his hand staying briefly on her shoulder. The touch sent shivers down her spine. The wine waiter appeared with a list that looked more expensive than Sarah's monthly shopping budget. David studied it carefully, clearly wanting to impress. After several minutes, he chose a bottle that made Sarah's eyes widen when she saw the price. "Are you sure?" she whispered as the waiter walked away. "That's a lot of money." "Don't worry about that," he said firmly. "Tonight's special. I want everything to be just right." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I've been looking forward to this all week, Sarah. Really looking forward to it." There was something in his tone that made her heart beat faster. This definitely wasn't just a casual meal. This took her back years to a time before the responsibilities of being a wife and a mother. The wine arrived with great ceremony. David went through the ritual of tasting and approving, clearly nervous but trying to appear sophisticated. When the glasses were filled, he raised his in a toast. "To the most beautiful woman I've ever known," he said. Sarah felt her heart skip as she clinked her glass against his. The wine was smooth and warming, relaxing the tension in her shoulders. Soon, their starters arrived. Sarah had chosen smoked salmon, whilst David had French onion soup. The food was excellent, far better than the simple meals she usually cooked at home. Everything about this evening felt luxurious, so different from her ordinary life. The conversation flowed as easily as the wine. They talked about their love of old films, their dreams of travelling to exotic places, and their frustrations with boring office life. David made her laugh with his impressions of his pompous colleagues, and Sarah found herself completely relaxed for the first time in ages. Suddenly he stopped mid-sentence. She watched as the colour drained from his face. He went white as a sheet. His fork froze halfway to his mouth, and his eyes fixed on something behind her with complete terror. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked. "Oh, bloody hell," David muttered under his breath, his voice tight with panic. "This can't be happening. Not now, not tonight." Without warning, he pushed back his chair so hard it scraped loudly against the floor. Several other diners turned to stare as he dropped to his hands and knees and scrambled under the table, disappearing from sight. "David," Sarah hissed, mortified, as the white tablecloth billowed around his vanishing form. "What on earth are you doing?" But David was already huddled beneath the table, trying to make himself invisible. Sarah could see his polished shoes poking out from under the tablecloth. The sight would have been funny if it wasn't so utterly embarrassing. The entire restaurant seemed to have gone quiet. Other couples had stopped their intimate conversations to stare at the extraordinary scene. Sarah felt horrified as she became the centre of attention. The elderly waiter who had been serving their section approached carefully. James Whitworth had worked at the Ivy Garden restaurant for over 20 years. In that time, he'd seen his fair share of unusual dining experiences, but he'd never seen a gentleman simply vanish beneath a table in the middle of dinner. "Excuse me, madam," he said in his refined accent, his face a picture of politeness. "I'm sorry to disturb your meal, but I couldn't help but notice that your husband appears to have slipped under the table. Is there anything I can do to help?" Under the table, David had gone completely still, probably hoping that if he didn't move, this nightmare would simply disappear. Sarah could hear other diners beginning to whisper amongst themselves, wondering about the drama unfolding before them. She glanced towards the restaurant's entrance, then back at the waiter's kind face. "Oh, that's not my husband," she replied calmly. My husband has just walked in. Click this link for another video that will really improve your English. I'll see you next time.